two aircraft, lost in the fog, not knowing that they are on a collision course with each other. How did they end up in this situation? And what happened in Milan's Linate airport on that very fateful day? On the morning of October 8, 2001, two aircraft are preparing for their flights from Milan's Linate airport. One of these planes is Scandinavian Airlines Flight 686, flying from Milan to Copenhagen. The aircraft being used for Flight 686 was a McDonnell Douglas MD-87. The MD-80 was registered Sierra Echo Delta Mike Alpha, nicknamed Lage Viking. The flight crew who will be piloting Flight 686 is Captain Joaquin Gustafsson, a 36-year-old with over 5,800 hours of flight time, joining SAS in 1990. And the next is First Officer Anders Highlander, a 36-year-old with over 4,300 flight hours, joining SAS back in 1997. On board Flight 686 were 6 crew members and 108 passengers, majority of which were Italian, Danish, and Swedish, for a total of 110 people on board. The second aircraft involved was Cessna Citation 525A, flying from Milan to Paris-Le Bourget. The Cessna was registered as Delta India Victor X-Ray. The pilots who were flying the jet were Captain Horst Königsmann, a 36-year-old German with over 5,000 flight hours. The next is First Officer Martin Schneider, a 64-year-old German with over 12,000 flight hours. On board the jet were 4 people, 2 pilots and 2 passengers, one of them being Luca Fossati, the chairman of a food company and owner of the private jet, making for a total of 4 people on board the Cessna. At around 6:59 a.m., the Cessna landed on Milan's Linate airport from a flight originating from Cologne, Germany. It's the morning of the 8th of October, 2001. SAS Flight 686 is preparing to fly from Milan to Copenhagen, with the 110 occupants boarding on Linate's east apron. Meanwhile, on the other side of the airport, the Cessna jet is on the west apron, originating from Cologne, preparing for its next flight to Paris-Le Bourget. Back on the other side of the apron, at 7:41:39, SAS requested for clearance to start their engines, with the plane requesting for clearance to taxi to runway 36 right at 7:54:23. Ground control had told them that their scheduled takeoff time would be at around 8:16 a.m. By then, the visibility at Linate was around 100 meters, meaning they couldn't see much even in front of them. A few minutes later, at 7:58:23, the Cessna jet requested to start up their engines. They were informed that they would be able to take off at around 8:19 a.m. At 8:01:24, SAS 686 switched frequency to Tower 118.1. From now, both aircraft would be on different frequencies. Flight 686 at this time was passing by the fire station near the end of the east apron. A few minutes later, the Cessna was given taxi clearance and was told to taxi on taxiway Romeo 5, which was headed north of the airport, which would avoid intersecting runway 36 right. Behind the Cessna, that tower also gave clearance to a different aircraft that would trail behind them taxiing on Romeo 5. But when the plane started taxiing, the Cessna had turned right before entering taxiway Romeo 6, which was heading south and would intercept runway 36 right. They gave a position report on 6:09:23, saying that they were approaching Sierra 4, a position marking near the intersection of runway 36 left, the runway parallel to runway 36 right, where SAS 686 is headed. The Cessna had stopped on a stop line near this marking while waiting for clearance. A few seconds later, ground control had given clearance for the Cessna to continue towards the main apron. By then, both the Cessna and the ATC thought they were at the taxiway heading north, the one that doesn't intercept the runway. At around 8:09, the Cessna crossed the runway holding sign, which was right before runway 36 right. At around the same time, tower frequency gave takeoff clearance to SAS 686. They started their takeoff roll around 8:10, in which at the same time, the Cessna was currently crossing runway 36 right. Only a few seconds later, around 8:10:20, SAS 686 lightly caught sight of the Cessna since the flight data recorder recorded a sharp nose at command. Only a second later, both aircraft had collided, with the Cessna being torn apart from the force of the collision since Flight 686 was going around 166 knots when it hit the Cessna. When both planes collided, the force caused the MD-80's right engine and right gear to separate along with a portion of the wing. After the collision, Flight 686 tried to take off, with them going airborne for around 12 seconds, reaching an altitude of 35 feet. But because of the loss of the plane's right engines and debris getting into the left engine, they quickly descended down into the end of runway 36 right. The pilots tried to apply reverse thrust, but because of the lost right gear, the plane started to drag and drift right before impacting a baggage building at the end of the runway at 139 knots. The force of the impact instantly killed everyone on board, and the resulting fire and aftermath would also kill around 4 ground staff in the building. When the plane impacted the building at 8:11 a.m., it produced a loud explosion and a series of loud bangs. Because the plane was still full of fuel, the resulting fire was extremely destructive. The tower got their first alert around 8:11 a.m. when police and a customs officer found someone with severe burns. The fire station got the alert of a rapid fire near the baggage building around 8:12 a.m. More fire rescue vehicles were sent after they were signaled that the fire involved aircraft. Meanwhile, Tower still didn't know about the collision and the crash. They saw that Flight 686 had vanished from their radar, but a few seconds later, another plane, which was parked at Gate A15 near the baggage building, informed the ground controller about the crash, reporting that they saw fire and streaks of red near the building's antenna. Both aircraft were destroyed by the crash, and all 110 people on SAS Flight 686 and the 4 crew of the Cessna plane were killed, along with the 4 ground staff. In the aftermath of the crash, the Agencia Nacional per la Sicurezza del Volo, or the National Agency for the Safety of Flight, launched an investigation into the causes of the accident. They later concluded in their final report released around January 2004 that while the immediate cause of the accident is from the Cessna getting lost in the fog, leading for them to get led astray, they didn't completely blame the pilots. At the time, Linate Airport didn't have a functioning ground radar. They had one approved, but it wasn't operational when the accident happened, and the airport's layout was confusing, with guidance signs and markers being blocked or obscured. Since when the Cessna ended up in taxiway Romeo 6, they couldn't see any signs telling that they were on the wrong taxiway. Linate also had motion sensors for runway incursions, but it was turned off to stop false alarms from animals or vehicles. Had they been on, it would have informed air traffic control about the Cessna's location, and perhaps it could have prevented the accident. The report also cited ATC as a cause, since when the Cessna correctly reported their position in Sierra 4, they disregarded the report since Sierra 4 wasn't on their airport maps, leading to them not knowing that the Cessna was on the wrong taxiway. And when the ground controller was directing planes, they were using terms that didn't match the actual signage on the ground. Along with that, both pilots weren't certified for landing in visibility below 500 meters, but they still landed despite visibility being at 100 meters. In the aftermath, 4 people were found guilty of the accident, including Airport Director Vincenzo Fusco and Air Traffic Controller Paolo Zacchetti, who were sentenced to 8 years in prison. Along with that, the former head of the airport and ATC agency were sentenced to 6.5 years. The Milan Appeals Court later acquitted the current and former airport directors and reduced Zacchetti's sentence by 3 years. 3 other people were also charged with multiple manslaughter and negligent disaster, with them getting 3 to 4 years in prison. In memoriam of the 118 victims of the crash, memorial services were held in Italy, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, with sculptures being built such as the Beach Forest, a memorial with 118 beech trees symbolizing the 118 victims, along with a sculpture named Infinity Pain. After the accident, changes were made in Linate Airport, mainly improving their layout and signage so pilots will be confused on where they are. The Linate Airport disaster ended up as the deadliest aviation accident in Italian history, but until now, these changes and lessons from SAS 686 and the Cessna are still upheld to this day, to prevent another accident like this from ever happening again. Hey guys, wasn't lying when I said minute by minute wouldn't take 6 months to produce again. Anyways, the only reason why this took a little longer than usual was because, well, as you saw from the upload a few days ago, there's a completely new animation. The next minute by minute episode won't need an animation though, so could be coming around sooner than you think. Anyways, that's it for now. Hope you all enjoy. Bye!